Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about international conventions for the protection of human rights, treaty bodies, their powers and functions in monitoring human rights situations. The objectives of this chapter are to understand the international conventions that have been entered into for the protection of human rights, the ICCPR, the ICESCR, the CEDAW, the CRC, etc. In addition to looking at the main conventions, we shall have a look at their optional protocols as well. Further, we shall discuss the bodies established under these conventions, that is, treaty bodies, including their compositions, powers, and functions through which they monitor the enforcement of human rights law. So here you can see the main conventions that are there for protection of human rights. The first and the foremost is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The second is the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The third important covenant is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. The fourth is the Convention on Rights of the Child. The fifth is the Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. The next is the International Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and their members of the families, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, International Convention for Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. The first convention that we are going to cover today is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Now, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights is a multilateral treaty, and it has been adopted by the United Nations General Assembly Resolution number 2200A on 16th December 1966, and it came into force on 23rd March 1976. If we look at the Article 49 of the Covenant, we find that the Article 49 allowed that the Covenant will enter into force 3 months after the date of the deposit of 35th Instrument of Ratification or Accession. The Covenant commits its parties to respect civil and political rights of individuals, including the right to life, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, electoral rights, and rights to due process and fair trial. As of September 2019, the Covenant has 173 parties and 6 more signatories without ratification. If we look at the Article 1 of the Covenant, we find that the states have to commit themselves to promote the right to self-determination and to respect that right. It also recognizes the rights of people to freely own, trade, and dispose of their natural wealth and resources. If we look at the ICCPR, we find that the ICCPR, or the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, is a part of the International Bill of Human Rights, along with the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the ICESCR, and the UDHR, which is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The ICCPR is monitored by the United Nations Human Rights Committee, which is a separate body and monitors the ICCPR and its implementation. And it reviews the regular reports which have been submitted by state parties on how the rights are being implemented. The states must report initially 1 year after acceding to the convention, and then whenever the committee requests, usually after every 4 years. The committee normally meets in Geneva and holds 3 sessions every year. If we look at the ICCPR, we find that the ICCPR has its roots in the same process that led to the formation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. A declaration on the essential rights of man had been proposed in 1945 San Francisco Conference, which led to the founding of the United Nations, and the Economic and Social Council was given the task of drafting it. Early on in the process, the document was split into a declaration setting forth general principles of human rights and a convention or covenant containing binding commitments. The former evolved into the UDHR and was adopted on 10th December 1948. The state parties to the present covenant, including those having responsibility for administration of non-self-governing and trust territories, shall promote the realization of the right of self-determination and shall respect that right in conformity with the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations. Drafting continued on the convention, but there remain significant differences between the UN members on the relative importance of the negative civil and political rights versus the positive economic, social and cultural rights. And this caused the convention to be split into two separate covenants. One contained the civil and political rights, and the other the economic, social and cultural rights. The two covenants were to contain as many similar provisions as possible and be opened for signature simultaneously. And each would also contain an article on the rights of the people to self-determination. The first document became the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the second, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. These drafts were presented in the UN General Assembly for discussion in 1954 and they were adopted in 1966. As a result of diplomatic negotiations, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights was adopted shortly before the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Together, the UDHR and these two covenants are considered to be the foundation of human rights texts in the contemporary international system of human rights. If we look at the Article 2, we find that the Article 2 talks about the right to legal recourse when the rights have been violated, even if the violator was acting in an official capacity. Also, the states are obligated to provide equal rights of enjoyment to both men and women. It is only in case of an officially proclaimed public emergency threatening the life of the nation that states may derogate from their obligations. Even under these circumstances, no derogation can be made from Article 6, 7, 8, 11, 15, 16 and 18. So even if there is a state of public emergency, Articles 6, 7, 8, 11, 15, 16 and 18 cannot be derogated from under any circumstances. Any state which is seeking to avail the option of derogation must inform the other party states at the beginning and the ending of the derogation period. That has been said in Article 4. Also, here we find that the articles in this part prevent any interpretation of any clause of the covenant to allow any individual or state to destroy any rights provided for by the covenant. It also prohibits restrictions on rights recognized by the party states through law, custom, or convention outside of the covenant. When we look at the provisions that are there in the part 3 of the International Convention of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, we find the rights which are pertaining to the right to life and which should be provided to every human being, and the arbitrary deprivation of these rights is prohibited by the covenant. The death penalty, if awarded by a competent court and not in violation of any law or convention, may be carried out, though anyone sentenced to death must have the right to seek pardon or commutation of the sentence. Further, such sentence cannot be awarded to pregnant women or those under the age of 18. However, this covenant does not promote the death penalty and cannot be used as an argument to prevent its abolition. When we look at the Article 6, we find that wherever there has been instances of genocide, the obligation of the party states under the Convention on Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide, they gain precedence. As the part of the right to life, this part also protects from torture of and cruel punishment, as well as from involuntary submission to scientific or medical experimentation. Further, slavery and forced labor are prohibited, and only exceptions are where hard labor has been awarded as a form of penal punishment by a competent court or as a part of military service, or if exacted in the case of emergency. So we find that in certain cases, forced labor is permitted, and those circumstances are when the forced labor is as a part of the military service or as a penal punishment it has been awarded, or it is been given in the case of a public emergency. So these are the articles that are there in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Now, we find that in this part also the right to liberty, preventing arbitrary detention and arrest without being informed for the reason for the same and in accordance with the provisions of the law has been given. Further, the person who has been detained must be brought before a judicial officer as authorized by law within a reasonable period, and any arrested or detained person shall be entitled to proceedings in a court of law. If arrest or detention is found to have been unlawful, the person in question has an enforceable right of compensation. When we look at the articles of the Constitution of India, there also we find that if a person has been detained, he has to be brought in front of a judicial magistrate for within a limited period of time, and that is his fundamental right, his or her fundamental right. And similar kind of a provision can be found in Article 9 of the ICCPR. Also, if there is any accused person who is in detention, then he shall be segregated from the convicts, and also there shall be a segregation of the juveniles from the adults. So if there is a person who has only been detained and he has not been convicted, then he has to be kept separately from the persons who have been convicted. Also, the young people who have been accused of committing crimes, who are the juveniles, they should also be kept separately from adults who have committed the crime. So all the persons who are deprived of their liberty, they shall be treated with humanity, keeping in mind that the aim of the system is reformation and social rehabilitation. We can find this in the Article 10 of the ICCPR. And no one can be imprisoned solely for the failure to fulfill a contractual obligation. This has also been given. Now, we find that this part also protects the right of freedom of movement and residence within the territory of the state, as well as to leave any country. These rights are only subjected to such restrictions as are recognized by law as necessary to protect national security, public health and morals, and freedom of others. So, the freedom of movement has been restricted, but only under certain circumstances, and these necessary restrictions are national security, public health and morals, and freedom of others. Otherwise, no person can be restricted. No person's movement, freedom of movement can be restricted within the territory of the state, as well as to the freedom to leave any country. Also, no person can be deprived arbitrarily of the right to enter his own country. Now, any alien who is unlawfully present in the state shall only be expelled by a decision taken in accordance with the law, and shall be allowed to submit reasons against his expulsion and have his case reviewed. This is the right that has been given to aliens in a territory who is unlawfully present in a state and who has been expelled by the state. After that, we see that equality before law and the right to fair and public trial is also protected under this part. Every judgment which has been made has to be made public, and the press and the public can be excluded only for reasons of national security, for protection of privacy of the parties, or in special circumstances to prevent prejudice to the interests of justice. However, every decision shall be made public, excluding those dealing with juvenile persons, guardianship of children, or other matrimonial disputes. So, we find that all the judgments have to be made public, but then there are certain circumstances in which these judgments must not be made public. So, for reasons of public morals, for national security, for privacy of the parties, and for protection of people who are involved in juvenile cases, cases of children's guardianship, and other matrimonial disputes, these judgments do not need to be made public. The law also protects from double jeopardy, which is being punished again for the offences that a person has already been convicted for or acquitted of. Further, every person shall be presumed innocent until proved guilty, and have the minimum guarantees of being informed of the nature of the charges tried without undue delay. And they have to be provided means and the time to prepare for the defense and to communicate with the counsel of his or her own choice. He should also be provided a legal aid and he should be allowed to examine witnesses and have access to an interpreter if required. And he should not be compelled to testify against himself or confess his guilt. We find similar provisions in the Constitution of India also. In the part 3 of the Constitution of India, we find these provisions which protect a person against double jeopardy, and for a person cannot be compelled to be a witness against himself. If a miscarriage of law is proved, the person shall be compensated according to law. The right to appeal has also been provided, as well as a provision requiring age and the desire for rehabilitation to be taken into account in case of juvenile offenders has been given under Article 14. We find that retrospective criminalization or increasing of punishment has also been prohibited under Article 15. The privacy, honor, and reputation of persons has been protected, and every person has the right to freedom of religion. Also, every person has the right to adopt and manifest the belief in religion and be protected from coercion to impair such freedom or any restrictions other than those prescribed by law in the interest of public safety, order, health, or morals, or the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. So we find that people have the right of freedom of religion. They have the right to adopt and have belief in any religion of their choice. And they have also been protected from coercion and impairment of such freedom by the state. And also, we have certain restrictions to this freedom, which are given as interests of public safety, order, health, morals, or the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. Also, we find that parents and legal guardians have the liberty to ensure religious education of their wards in conformity with their own beliefs. So these things have been given in the ICCPR related to the right to freedom of religion. Also, we find that every person shall have the right to hold opinions and the freedom to express them, including the freedom to receive and impart any information in any form. So these rights are restricted by law on the basis of respecting the rights and freedoms of others, protection of national security, public health, morals, and order. Other restrictions on which have been given in the covenant itself are the prohibition of any propaganda for war or advocacy of national, racial, or religious hatred. We find that a right to freedom of speech and expression has been given under the ICCPR, and every person is free to have opinions, to hold opinions, and they also have the right and the freedom to express their opinions. Also, they have the freedom of receiving and imparting information in any form. Under the ICCPR, these rights have been given. But then there are certain restrictions which have been given, which restrict the right to freedom of speech and expression as given under the ICCPR. And these restrictions are protection of national security, public health, morals and order, and respecting the rights and freedoms of others. So these restrictions have been given to the right of freedom of speech and expression under the ICCPR. Next, we find that under the ICCPR, we also have the right of peaceable assembly, and this right has also been recognized under the ICCPR. But again, the right to peaceable assembly is also subject to certain restrictions. So these restrictions are national security, public safety, order, health, morality, and protection of freedoms of others. So we find that along with the right to freedom of religion and the right to freedom of speech and expression, the right of peaceable assembly has also been recognized in the ICCPR. I hope that you all are able to recognize and appreciate that we have similar rights in the Constitution of India as well. So if we look at the right of peaceable assembly, we find the restrictions which are uh, on the basis of national security, public safety, order, health, morality, and protection of freedom of others. Also, this right of peaceable assembly is further elaborated in the right to freedom of association. So, right to freedom of peaceable assembly is elaborated with the help of the right to freedom of association, including the right to form trade unions, and also we have similar restrictions as I've been told earlier. Also, there is an additional option of imposing restriction on the members of the armed forces and the police, but without prejudice to the obligations under the International Labour Organization Convention of 1948 concerning freedom of association and protection of rights to organize. All of these rights have been given under the ICCPR under various articles. Also, we find that the right to marry has also been given to men and women of marriageable age, so long as the marriage is entered into freely and with full consent. So if two individuals, whether they are men or women, they want to get married and they have given full consent, then they have the right to get married according to their choice. Also, the state parties are required to take steps to ensure equality of rights and responsibilities during and at the dissolution of marriage, at which point provisions must also be made for protection of children where required. So we find that the ICCPR puts an obligation on the state parties to take steps to ensure equality of rights and responsibilities of men and women during and at the time of dissolution of marriage, within the time of the duration of the marriage as well as at the time of dissolution of the marriage, as well as for the protection of the children whenever it is required. Also, the rights of the children are further elaborated, and each child is entitled to have protection without discrimination. Each child must also be registered immediately after birth and also has the right to have a name and to acquire a nationality. All of these rights have been given to children. So they have the right to be protected. They have the right to be protected without discrimination. They have the right to be, their birth must be registered, and immediately after the birth, the registration must be made, and they have the right to have a name. They have the right to acquire a nationality. If we look at the political rights which are protected under this part, we find that each and every citizen has the right and shall have the opportunity to participate in the public affairs directly through freely chosen representatives and to vote at regular free elections, exercising universal adult franchise through a secret ballot, ensuring the freedom of expression of the electors, and to have access to public service. So we find that each and every citizen of the state parties, they must have, and they have the right to have the opportunity to participate in public affairs directly or indirectly, or through their freely chosen representatives. That is the people that they choose through voting. And the elections that are held, they should be free and fair elections. There should be universal adult franchise, and the persons who are chosen as representatives, they have to be chosen by vote and by a secret ballot, and there should be a freedom of expression of the electors, the people who are voting, and they also have access to public services. We also find that all persons shall be equal before law and entitled to equal protection of the law without discrimination. So we find that it is not only that the law shall be equally applied, but also there shall be an equal protection without discrimination. So both of these things have been incorporated in the right to equality under the ICCPR. We also find that the law shall prohibit discrimination and guarantee protections against discrimination. We can also have a corollary over here, and as a corollary we can see that the cultural and religious rights of minorities, they need to be protected, and the ethnic and religious minorities, they have the right to enjoy their culture, profess their religion, and use their language. This has also been given in the ICCPR. If we look at the part 4, we find the establishment of the Human Rights Committee and the various provisions related to the Human Rights Committee. So the Human Rights Committee under the ICCPR has 18 members, and these members are composed of nationals of party states. So the state parties who are members of the ICCPR, they send members to the Human Rights Committee. The total membership is 18 members. These people who are elected to the Human Rights Committee of the ICCPR are persons of high moral character, and they are recognized for the competence in the field of human rights. Also, consideration has to be given to the persons with legal experience. If a person is having legal experience, he is considered to be more qualified to be a member of the Human Rights Committee. Also, they are elected and they serve in their personal capacity. If we look at the procedure for election to the Human Rights Committee, we find that the states have to submit nominations within 3 months of the notification, and this notification is issued by the Secretary General 4 months before the elections. The election has to take place at the United Nations headquarters at a meeting summoned by the Secretary General. Also, a quorum which is required for the election is 2/3 of the state parties. The elected will be those who obtain the largest number of votes and an absolute majority of votes of the representatives of state parties present and voting. All of these have been mentioned in various articles under the ICCPR. If we start looking from Article 28 and further, we find that if there are any vacancies in the Human Rights Committee, then this vacancy can arise if the person who was at that particular position has ceased to carry out his functions in the opinion of the other members. Vacancy can also arise because of death and resignation. If ever there is a vacancy which has been declared with more than 6 months to the expiry of the term of the office, elections will take place as per normal procedure, and the elected member will hold office for the remainder of the term. These provisions have also been given under Articles 32 to 34 of the ICCPR. If we look at the kind of election that happens, we find that the members to the Human Rights Committee are elected by a secret ballot from a list of persons nominated by the state parties, and each state party may nominate 2 members at the most who must be nationals of that particular state. So, election happens by a secret ballot. There is a list of persons who are nominated by the state parties. Each state party is allowed to nominate at the most 2 persons, and they must be nationals of that particular state. The person who is being nominated, he cannot be nominated more than once. There are also some other conditions related to election, like no more than one state, uh, no more than one national of the same state can become a member of the Human Rights Committee. But nominations can be more than one to a maximum of 2. Also, there should be an equitable geographical distribution of the membership, and representation of various civilizations and legal systems should be there. For example, there has to be certain equity in the form of number of members who are chosen from North America, from South America, from Europe, from South Asia, and from East Asia, and from Africa. So all the places have to have representation in the Human Rights Committee, which is related to the ICCPR, which is the committee which is formed under the ICCPR. Now, when we look at the functioning of the committee, we find that the committee members, they receive their emoluments as per the decision of the General Assembly. All the necessary staff and facilities are provided by the Secretary General. The committee meets at the UN headquarters as many times as is required under the rules of procedure. There is no set number of times that the committee will meet. Also, the rules of procedure are to be established by the committee, but must necessarily provide for quorum of 12. So out of the 18 members, there should at least be a quorum of 12, and the decisions have to be taken by majority of those present. The committee elects officers for a period of 2 years. These provisions related to the functioning of the Human Rights Committee under the ICCPR have been given in Articles 35 to 39 of the ICCPR. After that, if we look at the powers and the functions of the Human Rights Committee, we find that the states have to submit reports whenever the committee requests on the measures that they have adopted to give effect to the rights that have been enshrined in the ICCPR. So we find that there is a reporting mechanism, and the Human Rights Committee accepts reports from various state parties. The reports are submitted to the Secretary General, who then forwards them to the committee and to any specialized agencies as may be relevant. The committee in turn transmits its comments back to the states as well as to the ECOSOC, or the Economic and Social Council. So these are the reporting requirements which are given by the Human Rights Committee. Next are the communications. So a state may at any time recognize the competence of the committee to receive and consider communications of failure of a state to fulfill obligations from another state. A state party submitting the communication must have recognized the competence of the committee. So we find that if there is any state and if it recognizes the competence of the Human Rights Committee to receive and consider communications of failure of the state to fulfill its obligations from another state, then the communications are recognized. Also, within 3 months on receipt of the communication, the state accused of failure of fulfilling obligations may give an explanation to the complaining state. But all these things happen only if the particular state recognizes the competence of the committee to receive and consider communications of failure of the state to fulfill obligations from another state. Only then such communications can be received by the Human Rights Committee. And the state parties who are submitting such communications must also have recognized the competence of the Human Rights Committee formed under the ICCPR. Only then communications regarding the failure of the states to fulfill their obligations can be taken from other states by the Human Rights Committee. So till now we have seen two powers and functions of the Human Rights Committee. The first are the power to take reports from the various states. So the states have to submit reports whenever the committee requests. Also, the committee may receive communications related to failure of a state to fulfill obligations from another state, but only if that state as well as the complaining state have recognized the competence of the committee in this regard. Okay, so these are the things which are related to the powers and the function of the Human Rights Committee, which is formed under the ICCPR. Now, if the matter is not solved at the domestic level within 6 months on receipt of the initial communication, either state can refer the matter to the committee, giving notice to the committee and to the other state. If after ascertaining all domestic remedies have reasonably been exhausted, the committee shall examine the communication in closed door meetings. It may call upon the states to supply relevant informations. The states have the right to be represented during consideration and make submissions. The committee shall aim for a friendly solution, keeping in mind the provisions of the covenant. A report shall be submitted within 12 months of the notice being given, including a statement of facts, submissions, and solutions if one has been reached. This report shall be communicated to the concerned state. So we can find that if there is a receipt of a communication from a state and the state which is accused of failure of fulfilling its obligations has to give an explanation to the complaining state in this regard, but if the matter is not solved within 6 months of the receipt of the initial communication, then either state can refer the matter to the committee and it can give a notice to the committee and to the other state as well. Also, we find that if at the domestic level or if at the level of the state themselves, all the remedies have been reasonably exhausted, then the committee will examine the communications in closed door meetings. So domestic remedies have to be exhausted first. Only after exhaustion of these domestic remedies, the committee shall examine the communications. Also, the states have the right to be represented during the considerations and submissions regarding the complaints that have been made. We find that the committee is being mandated to find a friendly solution, keeping into mind the provisions of the covenant. After such solution has been found, A report is to be submitted within 12 months of the notice being given, including a statement of facts, submissions and solutions if one has been reached. If a solution has been reached, a report has to be made, and this report shall be communicated to the concerned states. These provisions have been given in Articles 40 and 41 of the ICCPR. Next, we look at the Conciliation Commission. If a matter is not solved amicably, even after the communication of the report, the committee can establish a 5-member ad hoc conciliation commission to look into the matter with the agreement of the states. That is, only if the states agree, a conciliation commission can be formed in case the matter has not been amicably solved even after the submission of the report. If no agreement can be made, then the members of the commission shall be elected by a secret ballot by a 2/3 majority vote of the committee from among its members. So that tells us about the Conciliation Commission and its composition. Also, we find that the members of the commission shall serve in their personal capacity and shall not be nationals of the concerned states. The commission will have its own rules of procedure, chairman, and meetings in the UN headquarters will be held. As done earlier by the committee, the commission shall submit a report within 12 months. If an amicable solution has been reached, the report will consist of a brief statement of facts and description of the solutions. Otherwise, the commission may recommend a solution in the report which the states may or may not accept within 3 months of the submission. So we find that the commission is also having the power to submit a report, but then this report has to be submitted within 12 months. If an amicable solution has been made, that is an amicable solution has been reached, then the report will have to consist of a brief statement of facts and description of the solution. But if an amicable solution has not been reached, the commission may recommend a solution in the report which the states may accept or may not accept within 3 months of the submission. So we see that these are the powers and functions of the Conciliation Commission. So we have seen that what are the various articles which have been given in the ICCPR, which is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We have seen what is the membership, the procedure of election, and other conditions of the Human Rights Committee. We have also seen how the Human Rights Committee functions. We have seen the power and functions of the Human Rights Committee. We have seen how the reports can be called for by the Human Rights Committee, how they have to be submitted to the Secretary General, who forwards these reports to the committee and any specialized agencies as may be relevant. We have seen how communications from other states can be taken in case the states have recognized the competence of the Human Rights Committee and they have recognized the competence, and the complaining state as well as the state against which such a complaint has been received, both of them should have recognized the competence of the Human Rights Committee to receive and consider complaints. And we have seen that within 3 months of such communication, the state has to give an explanation of why there has been a failure to fulfill the obligations under the ICCPR. We have also seen that if the matter is not solved at the domestic level within 6 months of the initial communication, then either state can refer the matter to the committee after giving a notice. We have seen that after all domestic remedies have been reasonably exhausted, the committee can examine all the communications and it may call upon the state to supply relevant information. We have also seen that the committee shall aim to provide friendly solutions and a report shall be submitted in a specified period of time, including a statement of facts and the solution if a solution has been reached. In case the solution is not reached, then there can be a constitution of the Conciliation Commission. And this Conciliation Commission has to be a 5-member body. It is an ad hoc body, and this body looks into the matter in case an amicable solution has not been reached to by the committee, and with the agreement of the states only. If no agreement can be reached, then the members of the commission they can be elected by a secret ballot, and like the members of the Human Rights Committee, the members of the Conciliation Commission, they also serve in the personal capacity, and they have their own rules of procedure. They have their own chairman, and the meetings are held at the UN headquarters. All this is done, and if an amicable solution is reached, then the report is given, and if the amicable solution has not been reached, then the commission can recommend a solution in its report, but the states, they have the prerogative, it is their own prerogative to accept or reject the report which is and the solution which is given by the Conciliation Commission in its report. So we have seen what are the treaty bodies under the Human Rights Committee, under the ICCPR, which is the Human Rights Committee. We have seen the important powers, which is the reporting power, the communicating power, and the formation of the Conciliation Commission. We have also seen what are the various rights under the ICCPR. We have seen the nature of the ICCPR. We find that the covenant, it deals with we find that the part 1 of the covenant deals with the right to self-determination and the right of the people to determine their political status and to pursue the social and cultural developments of themselves. So all of these things have been given in the covenant. So we find that there are various parts in the covenant. There is part 1, which recognizes the right of the people to self-determination. We find that there is part 2, which obliges the parties to legislate whenever it is necessary to give effect to the rights to the covenant. Then we have the part 3, which lists the rights in themselves. And what are these rights? These are the rights to have physical integrity in the form of the right to life and freedom from torture and slavery, the right to liberty and security of person in the form of freedom from arbitrary arrest and detention, the right to have procedural fairness in law, and the right to have an impartial trial, the right to individual liberty in the form of freedom of movement, thought, conscience, and religion, speech and association and assembly, family rights, the right to nationality, and the right to privacy. We also find that there is a right to prohibition of any kind of propaganda of war, as well as any advocacy of national or religious hatred that constitutes incitement to discrimination. We also find that there is a right to political participation, including the right to vote. There is a right to non-discrimination by the majority communities. There is a right to non-discrimination which all the minorities have, and there is the right to equality before law under Article 26 and 27. After that, we have the part 4, which governs the establishment and operation of the Human Rights Committee and the reporting and the monitoring of the covenant, and also how the parties can recognize the competence of the committee to resolve the disputes between them. In part 5, we find that the covenant, it shall not be interpreted as interfering with the operations of the United Nations or the inherent right of all people to enjoy and utilize fully and freely their natural wealth and resources. These have been given in Articles 46 and 47. If we look at part 6, we find Articles 48 to 53. These articles govern the ratification, entry into force, and amendment of the covenant. So these are the 6 parts which are there in the ICCPR. The first part is dealing with the recognition of right of all people to self-determination. The second part is dealing with the obligation of the parties to legislate wherever necessary and to provide effective legal remedies and to not take away the rights. In part 3, the rights themselves have been listed. In part 4, there is the establishment and governance of the Human Rights Committee. In part 5, there is a clarification that the covenant shall not be interpreted as interfering with the operations of the United Nations or the inherent right of all people to enjoy and utilize fully and freely their natural wealth and resources. If we look at part 6, we find the governance and ratification of any treaty and any amendment of the covenant. So these are the various parts of the ICCPR. We find that there is the right to physical integrity. Under it, we have Articles 6, 7, and 8. We have the right of liberty and security of a person, which are under Articles 9, 10, and 11. There is the right to procedural fairness and the right of the accused, which is under Article 14, 15, and 16. Then there are certain individual liberties like right to freedom of movement and arbitrary expulsion of aliens and the right to privacy and freedom of religion, expression, freedom of assembly. These are all individual liberties which have been given in Articles 12, 13, 17, 18, 19, Article 20, Article 21, 23, 24, and 27. After that, we have the political rights. These rights have been given in Articles 3 and 26. Okay, so these are the various rights which are there under the ICCPR and the various articles of the ICCPR. Also, we find that there are 2 optional protocols to the ICCPR. So the first optional protocol establishes an individual complaint mechanism and allows the individuals to complain to the Human Rights Committee about the violations of the covenant. This has basically given an individual the right to complain to the Human Rights Committee, which is formed under the ICCPR. So this is one of the very important optional protocols of the ICCPR, and it has led to a very complicated interpretation and implementation of the covenant. But the first optional protocol, you can easily see that there is a certain infringement of the sovereignty principle, because the state parties who have ratified the first optional protocol, they have basically given the people or the citizens in their jurisdictions to complain at the Human Rights Committee about what is happening in the domestic jurisdiction. So that is the first optional protocol. Now, if we look at the second optional protocol, we find that it abolishes death penalty. And even though the death penalty has been abolished under the second optional protocol, the countries have been permitted to make reservations and allowing for death penalty for most serious crimes of military nature, which have been committed during wartime. So this protocol also has been ratified by at least 87 parties. Now, if we look at the various reservations, we find that different reservations have been given by various countries in relation to the ICCPR. So we find the major reservation which has been given by the United States is that no article should restrict the right to freedom of speech and association, and that the US government may impose capital punishment on a person other than a pregnant woman. So there are certain reservations in terms of what the different parties want to understand from these particular provisions. So they have been given by the different state parties. Also, we find that the ICCPR has a much more effective mechanism of implementation than the ICESCA, which we will be reading in the next lecture. So, thank you all of you for joining the class today.